Hope you're all doing well. Obviously, we're in the middle of camp season, so chasing a bunch of little kids around, and I let my staff, the younger guys on my staff, convince me to open up overnight camp again. And so we got a heck of a turnout, but that means that you end up with a group of kids running around here till 10 o'clock at night and got to keep them busy. And but it's been great. The last couple of weeks of camp have been really, really good, between father-son and team camps and now our day camp, overnight camp, whatever you want to call it. It's been real good.
Andrew, you just started.
Frank, obviously you're going to you'll be at the draft tomorrow. What impact do you? I know you always talk about growing the sport in South Carolina, growing basketball in South Carolina. What impact? This might be an obvious question, but what impact does two kids from South Carolina going 1-2 does for the growth of this sport?
It's not just that they're going 1-2 as players; it's who they are as people. They're unbelievable kids. They're engaging personalities. They both have tremendous families. This has happened before. You know, Kevin Garnett was a pretty high draft pick. Stanley Roberts was a pretty high draft pick. Ray Allen, I don't remember where he went, but pretty high draft pick. I wish, and I can't speak for those guys because I wasn't around here, I wish those guys would have had a bigger impact in basketball and just for people in this state. You know, and I'm not trying to say anything negative. I'm just saying it's happened before. Now, the unique thing about this year is that those two kids are going probably 1-2, but they're I know their families. I know everybody there, and they're great human beings. Which, when you couple that with their physical talent as basketball players, and the fact that anyone can interview them from any country in this world, and the first thing that comes out of those kids' mouths is how much they love South Carolina. So I hope it's something real powerful, not just for basketball, but for this state.
Did you have a question? Jeff, come.
Frank, what was the draft process like for AJ, and I guess how excited or happy are you that he's coming back?
Just a lot of information gathering. AJ's a young kid. His family, 2 years ago, they were worried about him being a high school senior last year. And all of a sudden, that fast forward button got hit on everything. Like it usually is, like we just hadn't done it since PJ. You know, Chris went through it last year, but Kristen did not generate the interest that PJ or AJ gathered when they declared early. However, my efforts to help are the same. It's just that the people on the other side don't have the same interest level. I mean, that's a difficult moment for me because watching those kids become pros brings me tremendous joy. Knowing I get to coach A.J. Lawson for another year brings me tremendous joy. So it's not like I'm happy of one and disappointed in the other. I know our team's better. I know I'll become a better coach. I know that having him around, he's a great teammate. It's a whole lot of good stuff. But he's put himself in a place where he's proven that he can succeed and succeed at a high level. And now going all those workouts and just the different things and the meetings and the conversations and some of these new rules that exist with the ability to engage an agent, for example, something different. That was new for me this year. So it was a tremendous learning process. Here's what happened with him. It's exactly what I tell every kid when I go in their home, tell them and their families. I want to put them in a place where every spring they got a really, really hard decision to make. Chase the dream, or because their experience here is so good that they want to come back. And that means they're lucky. They're making a hard decision, which means they like both sides.
Frankie touched on a little bit in your release, but bringing a guy like Seventh back into the fold here, just what can that do for this team this year, just having him practice with you guys? And do you plan on applying for a waiver, or is the plan for him to sit out this year?
No, we don't. My conversations with him throughout the whole recruiting process was sitting out. He's been under a microscope since he was 13 years old. I don't know how he's done it and kept his sanity. I really don't. He's Zion, all these kids. Even Zion's whole Zion deal started his junior year in high school. Seventh has been under that microscope since he was 13. Like, as a 14-year-old, every time he dribbled, every gym was sold out, and every critic was out there criticizing everything he did wrong. I have no idea how that young man has been able to keep the class that he lives life with under those circumstances. I tell you, I wouldn't have done it. I would have insulted somebody along the way. But the whole thought process is, let's redshirt, kind of get out of that spotlight for a minute, take a deep breath, regain, I guess the kids call his swag, which made him pretty darn good. And then the most important part, he and I get to know each other as a player and a coach. We got to know each other as people in the recruiting process. Let's get to know each other as a player and a coach. So when he's eligible to go, he doesn't have another year, and he can maximize who he is.
Coach, I'm curious from your perspective as a leader on the floor in the college ranks. At the Dan Patrick Show this morning, they were talking about busts, like how high do you have to be drafted and how poor do you perform to be considered one. Michael Beasley was considered a disappointment on the fringe of being a bust, considering how his career played out. I'm just curious, for any player that goes or selected highly, what advice do you give to them? Because at this point in their career, they're about to be intensely scrutinized with everything they do, especially if you get drafted number 1, 2, or 3 tomorrow night.
I think it's pretty sad when grown folks sit around trying to judge 18 and 19-year-olds as being busts. You'd have judged me when I was 19, you'd have kicked me out of every room you ever walked into. I think I've turned out okay. And my better years happened after I was 33 years old. So I really think that that's a sad conversation when people actually sit and start criticizing 18 and 19-year-olds for being busts. I can tell you this, Michael's a heck of a father. Michael takes care of his kids like no other man. Does that make him a bust, or does that make him successful? Because when he was 18 years old and he was the second pick of the draft, he had no chance of being a father. Everyone has a different journey, and if you're going to consider a bust based on stats or earning, I think that's pretty sad. I'm not a fan of that. I don't think there's a line, so you don't perform athletically the way people projected you to perform when you were 18 years old in a league that's around the best of the best in the world. But you go out and you do everything the right way as a human being and become a better husband, better father, better everything. How's that being a bust? Now, there's a lot of guys that have maximized their earning power and put up great stats and are complete bums as human beings off the court. I think that's a bust. The people that were exposed to that kind of success, yet they didn't do anything to impact people, which is what it's all about. So I don't know. Joe, I don't. Everyone has a different path. At the end of the day, we're trying to be successful. We're trying to be successful. If we just want them to be successful as athletes, then I guess you can say that a guy that goes outside of the lottery that doesn't have a long NBA career is a bust. A guy that goes inside of the lottery that has no injuries but doesn't keep an NBA contract for more than 2-3 years, whatever the rookie contract is, 3 years with an option or whatever it may be. I guess you can say that, you know, professionally, athletically, that guy. Yeah. But, I'm not a fan of it. I'm not into pigeonholing. We're complete human beings, and playing basketball is part of what we do. It doesn't define us, and it doesn't complete us. But if we're going to talk about just professionally, you know who might be a bust? How about the GMs that drafted those guys? Maybe they're the bust because they're the grown-ups. They're the guys that are, you know, been through the ropes and are supposed to be these intelligent human beings that make these great business decisions. Maybe they're a bust. You know, it's. But I guess if you're drafted in the lottery and you don't have any kind of injuries and you can't sustain a second contract, then I guess professionally, athletically, I guess the word bust. I'd rather just say disappointed than bust. But I don't know.
Appreciate it.
Yeah, good question.
You think Dan Patrick?
Dan has his moments. I like Dan because he's a Cincinnati Reds fan, just like me.
Coach, you mentioned Chris maybe not having as much interest as AJ or PJ previously before him. What has his draft process been like? What have you discussed with him during this time? And then what are you telling him in advance for tomorrow as he looks ahead to his basketball future?
Yeah, he didn't have as much interest last year when he declared as an underclassman. He had interest. He just didn't have as much as AJ and PJ. There's some genuine interest on Chris right now. There's a lot of my phone's been really busy the last 48 hours, and it's mostly been about Chris. I'm also getting calls on Brian Bowan, but mostly been about Chris. And there's a lot of realization because he's had some great workouts, and people have been able to engage him, and such a beautiful kid. And I'm not into compare. I'm not in the NBA. I'm not into comparing. I don't like saying that he did this and someone else didn't to benefit Chris's profile. His resume speaks for itself. I just know this. He's performed a lot better over a longer period of time, head-to-head, and won more games than a lot of guys that are supposedly going to get drafted. But I get it. He wasn't a sexy recruit coming out of high school, so all the recruiting gurus didn't give him credit coming out of high school, so then it's hard to give him credit when it's time to be a pro because they didn't think that he was good enough back in the day. But the one thing about the draft is that those intelligent guys Joe was asking me about, they're going to pick the guy that best fits their team, and we'll see. There's some genuine information gathering for Chris that's taken place over the last week and a lot of phone calls over the last couple of days. He's got some momentum going on his side right now.
Frank, what are your early impressions of Trey Hannibal, what you've seen in these workouts?
He's got a chance to be a star. His talent, his personality, his willingness to learn, his room for growth. I mean, he is athletic, strong, explosive, has feel. Like he's made passes in our workouts. And granted now, it's half-court workouts. It's not up and down. It's 3-on-3 for the most part. It's not 5-on-5. But he's made some decisions and passes with an explosiveness and preciseness. I haven't had anyone here that passes the ball like that. He's got a lot to learn. I mean, I was asked earlier, I can't remember who asked, I think it was Colin, but you know, in practice, he's going up against 7th and AJ and Jair Bolden, and he's going to be forced to grow every single workout, every single day. But he brings a talent along with a personality that's pretty powerful. It grabs you right away. And I told you guys, no one ever gave that kid any credit for being any good. I think we signed a pretty good in-state kid, you know. But he wasn't the sexy guy coming out of 9th and 10th grade by the recruiting gurus, so no one ever gives us credit for recruiting a good player. You know what gets me is people say, your recruiting has really gotten better. We just had the 4 winningest years in 50 years here, but our recruiting got better now. Was it bad then? It's funny. Recruiting guys are awesome.
Frank, some people close to Brian Bowen told me that he considers this place obviously his alma mater. This is he's got an apartment here. This family lives here, stuff like that.
Yep.
How close have you been with him since he left here last year? Went to Australia. Now he's back in the process. Certainly, he's got a good chance to hear his name called tomorrow. What do you think about his chances, and what do you think you guys gained from him, and what did he gain from this place in that 4 or 5 months here that he was with your team?
Yeah, you got to remember the environment. I shouldn't say the environment because that's kind of pointing at Louisville. Just the circumstances that were over his head when he got here. Like, he was like that guy that nobody wanted, toxic, don't touch him. It's a difficult place to be at that age. And we gave him a home. This university gave him a place that he can feel wanted and be a part of something. There's nothing more powerful as a human being than when people make you feel welcome. And that's what we did for him here. And his family will never forget that. He won't forget that. He couldn't wait. When his season ended in Australia, he couldn't wait to get back over here. As soon as they got in town, they had to go to L.A., because that's what the agent wanted him to do. And he was wearing his family out like, I get it, but the draft is 3 months away. I want to go back to Columbia. So they came down and spent 8-10 days here and worked out every single day. Brian, as the world will get to know, because he's never been able to get put on a platform for people to see who he is. He's a very talented young man that's just a tremendous, once again, tremendous human being. And now, how do I stay in touch? When guys are playing, I don't bother them. They'll reach out to me here and there. Or I might shoot them a note of encouragement or something. But I communicated with his mom, Carrie, a lot more. This is their home. When Brian has 15-year career, he's always going to wear a Gamecock hat. This is the place that made him feel welcome and very loyal people, and something he's not going to forget.
One of the conversations that takes place draft time is, guys preparing to handle adversity, especially if they go to a team that's high in the lottery that hasn't had a lot of success. How do you prepare players on that level when they're coming to be in your program to handle adversity when they haven't necessarily had that before?
That's what life's all about. It's and I tell kids all the time, they're kids when they walk on campus and they leave as young men. Life is not about parties, man. That's what you think when you're young. Life's about managing adversity, and you're going to have adversity come across your plate every single day. And I'm sure you guys in your professional and personal lives have all kinds of adversity every single day. I don't know what it is. Just like I got adversity every single day of my life with my family, my children, my players, campus, whatever. It's part of life. It doesn't make it good or bad. You can't run away from it every time it comes up, or you're going to live a short and lonely life. And players need to understand that. That's why I pressure players to work a certain way every single day, because that's what happens. It's when you're young, you don't have responsibility. Without responsibility comes no pressure. No pressure means you think everything's a good day. The older you get, you have a lot more responsibility. With more responsibility becomes a lot more pressure. With more pressure comes a lot more distractions and adversity, and it's all part of it. Like A.J. Lawson, whoever asked me about A.J. earlier, everyone talks about these kids that are 18 years old going to the NBA and the money and this and that. It's awesome. You do realize you're going to be in a locker room with a bunch of millionaire grown men that live a certain lifestyle. Is that 18-year-old going to be able to adapt being in a different city, in a different club, in a different hotel, with the groupies, with the drugs, with the drinking, and everything else that comes with that? profession, and anyone that says differently is lying to you. So that 18-year-old that we're calling a bust, maybe he wasn't a bust, but he wasn't prepared to take on that part of the money and lifestyle. There's only so much we can do to prepare them for that moment. That's why I give Calipari the credit I always give him, because he does an unbelievable job of preparing those kids for that moment, and that's hard to do. Easy to prepare them for basketball. It's hard to prepare them for life, and that's a different lifestyle. We all talk about the money that comes with being a lottery pick when you're 18 years old and how much fun it is. Give me $12 million when I was 18 years old. You'd be reading about me about doing some stuff now. None of them any good. So it's hard. It's not easy.
What was your reaction to the sentence handed down to Lamont Evans in the FBI probe and the following stories that the NCAA might look more deeply into the schools named in the investigation? Do you have any concerns that they will look into your program related to P.J. Dozier?
Can I answer the second part before I answer the first part? You okay with that? I think I've answered that plenty over the last 2 years. Do you think there's new evidence that came up six days ago or something? The NCAA is going to do. I'm privy that I've been in front of meetings with a group of people that has nothing to do with the FBI, with how the NCAA is going to manage this whole thing that's in front of them. I think they're going to be extremely aggressive. I'm not part of this majority opinion that they're just going to kind of let it all go away. I think they're going to be extremely aggressive, and when the time comes, I will applaud them for being aggressive. Where we stand on that, I don't know. Obviously, Lamont worked here. I'm at peace, Phil. I go to bed every night. I'm at peace. I know how I live my life. That's what I'll tell you. And I think the people I work with here, they're at peace too. I feel really bad for Lamont. Now I'll go to the first part of your question. I feel really bad for Lamont because he's just and Book Richardson. Those two guys I've known since I coached high school basketball against Book Richardson. I've known Book since he's 16 years old. My heart goes out to those two guys. And my biggest disappointment in this whole deal, and I've said this privately and I've said it publicly and I'll repeat it again, why did they find those 4 young African Americans to go on the mission that, more people involved than just them 4? Why is it just them 4 going to jail? I just read something the other day where the sailing coach that was involved in that whole admissions deal, $600,000 or something, and Lamont, whatever he did, I guess what was proven was $20,000, if I'm not mistaken. And he, gets 3 months. I know his wife, know his son, know his family. We're big boys now. We make decisions. And that's, that's the beauty of living in this country. That's we're allowed to make the decisions and do the things that we choose to do. When you get caught and you choose to walk on the wrong side of the fence, there's repercussions. And that's what makes this country great. You get to choose. They don't make you live life a certain way. They allow you to choose. And that to me is really sad. It really is sad. It's that those are the only that 4 young guys that they got paid. You know what? I'm not into. I follow law enforcement. I'm a big fan of it. When the big boys get involved, Phil, they don't arrest the guy in the city that's peddling dope in the street corners. They wire that guy so they can get the big dog. That's why the big dogs get involved. And the big dogs got involved, and they went and got the guy that hangs out the street corner. And that was disappointing to me from a law standpoint. But it's that whole chapter to me is sad. It's sad. But I also think it was needed. And now the NCAA will do its part, and I have faith. Like I said, I'm not like everyone else that thinks that they're just going to kind of let this pass and then kind of come out with some blanket statement. I think they're going to be aggressive with how they go about their business. And I applaud them for being aggressive.
Hey, Coach. Last season you guys had a lot of obstacles to work through, from injuries to the youth and learning about your team. Despite not finishing the way you had hoped, there was a lot of optimism looking into this next season. But now knowing that you have these 7 guys coming into your program, you have Trey Henry, you have Seventh Woods, how much more confidence does this bring you now about your team? And do you see this program having the potential to be good or just as good as the team that made a run at the Final Four a few years ago?
Yeah, I mean, everyone likes their team in the summer. If you don't like your team in the summer, you probably want to call your boss and say, hey, can we talk about a buyout here? It's if you don't like your team in the summer, you probably need a new profession. I think we have a lot of talented pieces. I think top to bottom, 1 through 14, 15, if you include the walk-ons. It's as talented a team as I've been a part of as people, work ethic, talent level, experience, when you put it all together. Now, when next season gets here, I was at K-State. We go to the Elite Eight, and we return. We only lost our point guard and our starting center, and our starting center averaged 2 points, 3 rebounds a game. And his backup was a McDonald's All-American. So coming back on paper, the stats looked real good. But when you get on the court, the people didn't connect. And all of us that and I say us, including myself, even though I don't embrace it, but the people that live in the world of analytics, numbers don't have to sit in the same room and communicate with each other. Numbers hang out on a piece of paper. People have to live in the same locker room, in the same apartment building, coexist. People are the ones that deal with the emotions on when the numbers don't work. Numbers have no emotions. So making decisions on numbers doesn't represent a good team. The season teaches you, coach, where your team has faults. And last year's team learned to win, regardless of all the adversity and the immaturities and the injuries. And last year's team never ran away from it. New guy, I'm different than most. New guys don't get me excited for the upcoming year. The old guys do. The returning guys give me an enthusiasm that they're going to be so good as players and as people that they're going to help the new guys. So then the new guys are better prepared to move forward. But the talent level, the totality, probably the best I've had since I've been here. That's in the summer. PJ and those guys took it to a different level when we got to October. And will this team do that in October? I don't know that yet. But right now, it's a fun, and they're fun. They're fun to be around. It's we got some talented freshmen coming in. Trey Henry, I think, is going to be a real good player for us as a grad transfer. 7th, being around. Let's not forget now, he backed up 2 lottery picks. It's not like he went there and didn't play, and he was a rotation player on the national championship team. He's got some experience there, and he's such an incredible kid that you can argue he was their favorite teammate up there. You ask people, they'll tell you that. He's going to bring that to our team, too, even though he's not playing.
And then Derek.
Kind of a follow-up to that. Since we've talked to you last, you added a couple of big guys in Henry and McCreary. Just kind of tell us about those guys. How do they fit?
Yeah, I mean, Jalen, I love Chuck Martin. Hold on, let me hit rewind here. Bruce Shingler loved Jalen last summer. Chuck Martin went to see him. He loved Jalen. Jalen came on a visit, I want to say it was the Auburn game back in January. He wanted to commit to us then. I didn't have a scholarship. And I was like, And I didn't know about him enough as a person. Like, we didn't have a scholarship. I actively gathering information on him. And when I mean gathering information, I'm not talking about is his jump hook good, is his right hand good. I'm not about who he is, what he's about, what his family's about, how he acts, how he deals with coaches, how he is as a teammate, those things. So I was not an information gathering thing. So then we're in the middle of the season, and he had a game in Myrtle Beach, and I told Chuck, I said, Chuck, if someone leaves, we got to have someone in the spring in the fold. And Chuck had the scout. It was later in the, I don't know, it's probably late February now. And I said, just tell Perry to go. So Perry goes. Perry calls me on his way back from Myrtle Beach. He said, Frank, this kid is really good. And that's a long story on his recruitment. And I think I wasn't going to have a scholarship for somebody that I know our staff liked that much. And then the whole thing with Jason Cudd kind of popped, and which caught me off guard. And I was at peace with Jason coming back. It's not like I was walking around frustrated because Jalen wanted to come out and have a scholarship. That's part of life. That's the way it works. I wanted to be safe. I tell you guys, we got to keep recruiting so we're not surprised when the time comes. That's a perfect example of what happened. You know, Jason made a decision that kind of caught me off guard, but as soon as he made that decision, we then aggressively went after Jalen, who we had already built a relationship with, and he knew a lot about us, and then he made a pretty quick decision after that. And then Henry, when Felipe also, I kind of knew what was going on because I know all the people involved, but kind of caught me off guard that when I was told about it, the decision had already been made. That part caught me off guard. I wasn't surprised, but the fact that when I was engaged in a conversation, that decision had already been made. When he made that decision, then we aggressively started pursuing grad transfers because we had too many freshmen already. And Henry was available, and we were I was the first head coach to go see him in person. And that loyalty meant something to him. And so he made a decision there too.
And then you just pass it to Derek.
I guess kind of sticking with Jalen and Micaiah a little bit, you weren't shy last year about talking about how your team needed to rebound better. Do you think that adding those two guys with Mike and Alonzo coming back, you can be a better rebounding team next year?
Yeah, I have total confidence, and our guards will be better rebounders. Keyshawn Bryant will be a better rebounder. Justin Minaya being back, he'll be a better rebounder. Micaiah Henry's a pretty good rebounder. That's not his strength now. But when he wants to go get it, he gets it. One of the reasons he picked it here, because he felt that I was going to challenge him to grow, and even though it's a short window. Jalen McCreary, he's real good at what I call chasing the ball. Like when he sees that ball, he goes after that ball, whether it's on the rim, on the floor, or on the pass. He figures out a way to go after the ball. Alonzo will be better prepared this year to help us in that department. He's got great hands. And guys with great hands usually catch the ball. So I think we'll be a better rebounding team. That was a weakness for us last year. We didn't get as many free throw opportunities outside of Chris Silva because we were not a very good offensive rebounding team. And that's always been a big part of how we get to the foul line. But I think we'll be better at that this year.
Frank, the last couple of years when you've gone grad transfer, it's been backcourt. With a post player coming in that situation, what's different, if anything, as far as the transition they make? Because I know you've talked in the past about how you wish you had more time with guys like Frank or Wesley as they got out of the habits they built up in another style of play or a program and evolved into what you wanted. Is it a similar process for a big, or is there anything that you feel like is different in terms of the responsibility level and what you ask of them to be able to slide into what you want to see sooner?
Yeah, I don't know if one's easier than the other. Bigs depend on the ball being passed to them. And you're at every one of our games. How many people actually play through the post anymore? So, yeah, so those grad transfers we taken, it was like teaching junior high guys on how to feed the post, even though they were college seniors. And the importance it is to feed the post and how to feed the post. So there was a big learning curve there because that's a big part of how we play when we set offense up. Micaiah is naturally a post player, back to the basket guy. That's where he's the most comfortable. He knows how to use his body, knows how to seal, knows how to catch, knows how to score in there. So his adjustment is going to be fairly simple there because our guards are trained to pass it in there. So he just has to do what he does, and he's going to find out that the ball's getting to him. Where his adjustment is going to be is rebounding, like, you know, how we defend with our bigs. Our bigs don't stand in the paint with their hands up like 1974. Our bigs have to get out and defend because people all shoot threes out there. And then the last part, you know, I know everyone says I hold players back because I make them defend and that we play slow and methodical. I understand that, but if you go check the actual records, we were the fastest playing team in the SEC last year. When Sindarius and those guys went to the Final Four, we led the NCAA in points per game. So for a group of guys that play that slow, he's going to have to make the adjustment to run, and which most bigs don't run because, you know, they kind of get there when they get there. And you saw Alonzo Frink struggle with that one last year, you know, and that's an adjustment. So he's going to have to adjust in those two phases. But where it comes naturally for him, which is posting up and sealing and catching, our guards are trained to pass it in there, so that part will be easier for him.
Just a couple kind of housekeeping. Are all freshmen, they're here, all enrolled and ready to go for next year?
Except Jalen. Jalen graduated from Legacy Charter. You put me on the spot here. Last Friday.
Okay.
So he didn't graduate early enough to be in summer school for summer one. So the plan is for him. He's here working camp. So if you see him around, he's here to work camp. But summer school starts June 24, summer 2. The plan is for him to be at that. And then the other one that's not here is Henry, because he graduates July. His last class ends July 9. So whatever the timetable is between completing the course and actual getting a graduation.
Scheduling. I know that you spoke about how you were debating about the non-Division I game. Have you reached a decision on that? Is that something that's still up for debate? And then any other news there, finalization of that schedule that you have to reveal?
Yeah, I'm not going to schedule the Division II this year, and I went against what I'm all about to make that decision. No one forced me to make that decision. I made that decision. Here's at the end of the day. Here's in a nutshell. With all due respect to the NIT tournament, of which I've been a part of it 3 times, twice as a head coach, once as an assistant coach. I could be wrong, but I think it's 3 times. With all due respect, I'm sorry, 4 times, okay? With all due respect to the NIT tournament, we prepare our teams for the NCAA tournament, okay? To go to the NCAA tournament, there's a criteria in place where it doesn't count non-Division ones, all right? For anything else, that criteria don't exist. For the NIT, for record, for this, for that, for whatever. There's no other place where there's a criteria that says non-Division ones do not count. The only place they do not count is in the NCAA selection committee's computers. So our job is to prepare our team for the NCAA tournament. That's what we fight our tails off to get into. When you don't get in that tournament, then obviously you're trying to play postseason because you get more games, more practices, and it's good. Your fan base stays engaged and excited that your team actually is good enough to play in the postseason. I would hope so, because when football plays in a bowl game December the 2nd, I'm not talking about South Carolina, but some school's bowl team plays in a bowl game on December the 2nd, everyone acts like that's a great accomplishment. You know, I would hope note that going to the NIT can be viewed the same way as that bowl game on December the 2nd. If you're 16-16, you're 17-16, you're not going to the NCAA tournament unless you win your conference tournament. It is what it is. Does that make sense what I'm saying? And so that one game, I don't see where you gain more. You cover us pretty closely. Do you think our schedule was pretty hard last year? Do you really think that non-Division I game was the one that kept us out of postseason?
Did it factor in?
It's not part of the criteria for the NIT. No, our record was 16-16 going into the NIT, not 15-16 or whatever. It was NIT. The people who sit out for the NIT, they look at it as 16-16. So it's, you know, now who chooses who gets in and for what and reasons, I don't know. I know that there were 3 teams in that field that had worse resumes than us, but they got in. I'm not going to tell you what teams they are. You can do that research. It's, but so I'm not. Yeah. I'd like to say this, and I'm going to speak a little arrogantly here, okay? I coached a team that was a 2 seed in the NCAA tournament and had a non-Division I game on its schedule. I coached a team in South Carolina, went to the Final Four, so I think I got a feel for what it takes to get into that tournament. Playing a non-Division I is a non-factor for that tournament, but we'll see what happens this year. You know, I know this, it's a lot more expensive for our school, and there's a school outside the state that's getting that money, so.
I guess why then did you come? Obviously, you like to play that game. So why at the end of the day did you go? Did you change it?
Maybe so I can get to the end of the year and say I told you so. Maybe. I'm kind of stupid and stubborn sometimes, and it gets in my way.
What was your reaction to the three-point line being moved back, and will that change your approach, if at all, this year?
The three-point line getting moved back, I thought was a great decision. I thought it's just too easy a shot right now. I think it's a great decision. Everyone adapts. You know, guys that can shoot adapt. They just got to, it's just, you practice starting further out on the floor. Your spacing's better. Everyone wants to make the lane wider to create more space. It's not the guys on offense that mess up the lane. It's the guys on defense. And so the lane can be 50 feet wide. My help defenders are still going to be in the paint. So there's not going to be freedom of movement in the paint. But now by moving the three-point line further out, if my defenders help too much, it's a longer run to get back to the ball when the ball's reversed. So now it opens up passing and it opens up shooting. So that's how you create freedom of movement, is by forcing the offensive guys to play further away from the basket and then giving more points for the people that play out there and make shots. So spacing will be better. Spacing's better. Flow, player movement, whatever you want to call it's better. The one thing that's going to be an adjustment is footwork, because when you take corner threes, you don't have as much space anymore. So, you know, we teach 1-2 step to shoot the ball. Well, when you're on the sideline and you don't have a lot of space, that 1-2 step usually means you might step out of bounds or you're going to step on the three-point line. So we have to practice those shots. They become more of, I don't want to call them set shots, but you can't be as aggressive with your footwork because you don't have as much space. And remember, it's not, Reggie, it's not you and me shooting the threes. It's guys that wear size 15 shoes shooting the three. So there's even less space on the sideline. So those corner shots is where the footwork and the technique has to be practiced and rehearsed. But I think the line get moved back was right decision. I think it's good.
I guess at the SEC meetings the other week, alcohol sales were permitted at venues in the SEC. Do you have a firm opinion on that yet, or would you like to see alcohol be sold at Colonial Life Arena?
I'm glad I quit drinking in 06, or else I'd tell you to fill my cup up every time out. And it's I'd be a dandy at press conferences after games. Oh, God. I don't know. I'll say this. I just hope college football atmospheres don't become NFL football atmospheres. I haven't been to an NFL game in a long time, and I love football because the atmosphere is not good. I grew up as a kid going to the Orange Bowl. I can't take my young kids to an NFL game because it's just, you don't know what's going to happen. It is just, it's brutal. And I just hope that doesn't enter, at college football games, you always got the people that drink and all that, and I've done it too, and it's part of the party. But when you get inside the stadium, there not being any alcohol, at least people are sane mind in there, and it's a different atmosphere. I hope that once that's allowed, I don't know if we're going to do it. I'm not privy to those discussions or conversations, but once that's allowed across the country, that it doesn't change the atmosphere, the family-friendly atmosphere that we have at collegiate athletics.
Frank, it's obviously a tough transition for freshmen coming in. You had so many of those guys last year. I'm wondering, as you reflect on the season, did you handle those guys any differently because of the roles that they were playing and how important they were with how you were in managing their mistakes? Did you change it all as a coach? And if so, do you think that kind of carries over into this year?
Yeah, I mean, if you include Trey Campbell in there, we're playing Trey Campbell, A.J. Lawson, Keyshawn Bryant, 30 minutes a game the last 5 weeks of the season, or 6 weeks of the season, or whatever it was. I had no other option. So I had to learn to be a lot more patient than I probably have been my whole coaching career from that standpoint. And I realized that patience sometimes is a good thing in the case of learning. I've always been a big believer that when guys don't do what they're taught to do or practiced to do, take them out of the game. I learned that way. I've always coached that way. That's why I believe in depth, because it creates internal competition to make sure everyone's doing what they're told. Because if they don't, they know there's another guy that's ready to go in there and do it. We didn't have that last year. That's why that team was so much fun to be around, because we messed up a lot of stuff. But their enthusiasm to get better, to go out and do it again the next day, it was never rattled. And but I learned to be patient, and I'm going into next season with that same mindset. I'll tell you in November how good that patience stuff's working out, because God willing, I'm going to have plenty of options on the bench next year. So am I going to be yanking guys in and out like I always have? I don't know, but those guys last year, those guys earned my trust. And they earned it not because we won games, but because of how they approached it every day, knowing there was no one else out there to help them. And that was, and it's not like we were winning early. So they could have very easily gone the other way, but they chose not to. Yep.
Has Justin and TJ been full participants? How are they health-wise? How do they look on the court?
Yeah, they're both great. They're both healthy. They're both going. TJ's put on probably 20 pounds since he got on campus, which he needed. Justin's feeling pretty good about himself right now. They're both stronger than they were before. They're in a good place. Justin was cleared before school ended. TJ was cleared while school, between, what do you call it? Winter? Is that what you call that term? January, spring? Whatever that semester. It ends in April. Yeah, he got cleared between April and they reported for summer school. So they're both full go 100%.